Market Research Customer Insights, prepared for and presented at the 2017 Square One Entrepreneurship Training Program. Square One is a program of the Center for Emerging Technologies. CET is an affiliate of the Cortex Innovation Community. Square One is funded in part by the Missouri Technology Corporation.
We're going to go through some types of consumer research, which is a critical part of any product development. And there's basically three major categories: qualitative, quantitative, and secondary research. So we're going to start with the qualitative, because that's where most people start. And when you think about qualitative research, most people think about focus groups. Is that what you thought about the first time before you looked all the way through that deck? How many people just thought it was focus groups? Nobody thought it was focus groups? Yes. Yeah, okay. But very few of you thought it was focus group. What did you think it was? Curious. Okay. Okay. Well, qualitative is actually an in-depth study and trying to prove a hypothesis with a very small group of people. So it could be a focus group, or it could be some other type of situation with just small groups of people. And it's always exploratory, even though I say usually. That's the one thing that consumer researchers really hate, is when clients try to use qualitative research like quantitative research in terms of counting and then making statistical projections. And we talked to 20 people and 12 of them like the ideal, so it's a go. It is really just to kind of give you the what, who, why, and how about your product. It is not intended to be quantitative. So it does seek to understand the what and why. Why would you use this? How does it integrate into your day? What benefits does it have for you and your family? So it's those really soft, emotional, very intimate kind of questions around how this consumer might engage with your product. And they're usually open-ended questions. It's rare that a moderator will ask a yes/no question. If they do, you should stop right then and get somebody else, because that is not the purpose of qualitative. That they're trying to get people to really talk and explain about what it is they're feeling about your product. And so it reveals behaviors, attitudes, and perceptions. How will they use this product? How do they feel about it? What did they think when they first saw it? So those are the kinds of things that would be very important to you, given the fact that consumers spend about 15 seconds deciding whether or not they're going to pick up your product. So the results are really descriptive and not predictive. So they're describing the how, the why, not necessarily telling you have a winner on your hands. It can give you some clues that you're at least on the right track. So typically it does include focus groups, and focus groups are about 2 hours. And personally, I would rather not moderate a group that's more than 8 people, but some people can get 10 in there. I don't. So I prefer groups that are about 8 at the max. And then you have the IDI, which is what I think you're talking about. It's the individual interview where you actually sit down with someone, and usually that entails a moderator guide or discussion guide, and you're asking them a series of probing questions about your product and any kind of positioning or anything that you're interested in finding out. But it's just one person talking to another person. That can be done, historically it's been done on the phone, but it can also be done in person. Dyads and triads, it's just like that. You go from one person to 2 persons to 3. So sometimes it's good to have two people there depending upon what the objective of the study would be, and that's fine. So I love the ethnographic. Did people understand what that was when you look through the deck? Have you ever had someone follow you around your kitchen and look in your refrigerator to see what kind of food you have and watch you prepare a meal to see exactly what you do? Because typically consumers, if you just ask them to describe the meal preparation process, you'll get not a completely different, but a different point of view versus if you ask them that question and then actually go to their house and film them doing it, and that tells you the real deal about what it is that they're doing in that meal prep. Or when they're going on a shopping trip, they might be able to describe to you what it is that they do on that shopping trip, but having someone either with them or having, now you have technology that can actually be attached to their body to walk them through the store, that you can get a really good idea. So it's a little bit like spying, is what I call it. So the benefits of qualitative is that you can actively engage with the consumer. So I can ask Wendy, well, what did you like about that? Wendy says, oh, it's fabulous. I think my kids are going to love that. And then I can go, well, why? Why do you think that? Why do you think your kid's going to like it? Or who else do you think might like it? So I can say, well, what if we had some words? What words would you think would be associated with this product or service? Oh, well, what comes to mind? And then someone else might say, well, it makes me happy. And then someone else might say, yeah, it does. It really lifts my spirits. And so people can actually build upon each other and get a more clear understanding of what it is that's going on with that product or service. So that's one of the major things that qualitative can do better than some other things. And good moderators will have projective techniques, like they might have collages and ask people to build what they believe this product looked like. They might ask a person, if this product was a person, describe that person. What sex is that person? What's that person's name? What does that person wear? What do they do? How do they feel? You know, do they have family? They might ask them to build a whole persona around who might use that product. And all those projective techniques tell a story that people can't normally tell just straight up. So you're kind of tricking them into talking about how this product really fits into their lives. So you can use it for lots of things: evaluating new products, advertising, brand stories, a go-to-market strategy. What if we have this product in Best Buy? Would that be a place that you might go to seek out a product like that? Or understanding what's going to make them actually purchase this product. I mean, what situations are relevant to say, yes, this is a product that I need, I want, and I'm going to buy. A big one is determining consumer language, especially when you're talking about millennials or any kind of ethnic consumer. So language in the African American community is very different than language in the Asian community. And, and if you're going to be speaking to people about what it is that you have to sell, then that might come into play. Well, tell me how you would describe this product, instead of trying to make it up yourself, because typically you might be wrong. So that's another one that is really great in qualitative. So developing a persona. So then once you talk to all these people in groups, you can kind of figure out who your consumer is. You can figure out what they like, what their average age is, what they're doing, how they feel about things. And it goes deeper than just what are they going to do with your product. Because your product is a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of their lives. So you want to know what the whole person is thinking, feeling about their lives in relationship to what it is that you're presenting to them. So, her name is Sally. She's a millennial. She's actually one of those that are on her own. She's making 40 grand, and she really loves her dog. She's a vegan, so don't try to give her any animal products because then it's a problem there. And she's really interested in saving the earth. So things that might save on usage, if you've got a brand that uses recycled paper product or reduced packaging, this might really appeal to someone like that. So you're building a picture of your primary consumer. But sometimes your primary consumer might be 3 people. It might be, in the case of printers, for instance, you might have somebody who's like me, I'm just using it at home for lightweight business. But if you go to I'm going to make this up, if you go to like IBM, they might have some power users around printers, and they're wanting printers to do all sorts of things, including send information out to a Salesforce or faxing. They might want the printer to be able to work in color or talk to another printer. So the kind of messages the casual user has versus a business user versus a high power user might be very different. And so in qualitative, you can actually talk to these people and figure out what's driving their behavior and their motivations. So you can actually tell a story around each one of those. So that's some very specific target marketing in terms of communication strategies. So if you're putting together a email campaign, you want one message to go to Pete, a different message to go to Jennifer, and yet a different message to go to Brad, but you're still selling them a printer. Does that make sense? Good. And this is one of my favorite. I couldn't find a tequila bottle, but but if I was working on alcohol, this is great. So you have all these different varieties of labels. Basically what they're testing is packaging, but in a qualitative situation, you can probably get at what people like about each one of those and maybe narrow this down from 6 to 3 viable options. And you might cut and paste some because people are going to say, well, I like where that is, but I like the shape of this bottle, which is actually a little different. So they'll be able to kind of give you some direction in terms of what they like about each one and try to build their favorite. You can actually ask them to do that in a qualitative situation. You can give them the tools and say, make up, using these elements, make up your own bottle. With qualitative, if you're talking to people, you can actually create word clouds. So if you sat through 3 or 4 groups and and it's food, and you keep hearing people talk about, oh my gosh, I need snacks for my kids. Snacking is so important. And you hear that a lot, then snacking gets really big. But it has to be healthy, and I don't have a lot of time, so this really needs something to grab and go, simplicity. And then you might have some, people talking about, well, I like vegetarian or vegan, but you don't hear it quite as much, so it's a little smaller. And then you get down to, it has to be sustainable. I'd like it to be sustainable, but that's not a key purchase driver for me. So maybe sustainability is important, but it's not a real driver. So you start to collect all of these words that people are saying and then really track how often they appear, and then you know what the big drivers are, and you can create this and use this as a model for positioning and product development. So, yeah.
Could you tell us what the name of that tool is again?
Well, it's a word cloud.
A word cloud, thank you.
But it's the process to get you there.
Yes.
That's the moderator's job. And now you can do, which is one of my favorite things, online qualitative. So, qualitative has traditionally been done person to person, in person. You rent a facility or you rent a hotel room, you're talking to people face to face. Well, like everything else, there are now digital tools that allow moderators to be able to conduct market research online. And that's because we have internet text now, we have online bulletin boards, video conferencing, and you can do this either on a desktop, smartphone, or tablet. So if you can imagine your online qualitative, you got those same bottles of wild turkey, and now you're looking at different individuals, like she might be in New York, let's go, well, he's in Chicago, she's sitting here in St. Louis, she's in LA, he's in New York. So instead of me having to get on a plane, fly to Chicago, talk to some people, fly to New York, talk to some people, fly to LA, talk to some people, I can talk to them all at home, on my couch, probably not in my jammies because they can see me. But if it was a video chat, I could potentially, just a chat, I could potentially just be there in my sweat, talking to them about this. So that's pretty cool now, don't you think?
Yeah.
Okay, and I put this in here, which is why I had to have my computer, because it'll tell you about online qualitative research, but more importantly, this is something that you can do in terms of developing shoestring market research for yourself. So what you're about to see is a 1-minute video that I did using PowerPoint, and then I put together the slides, and then I just did a voiceover on my computer. And so this is a tool that if you think about it, you can actually tell the story about your brand, your product in a very simple format and use that to show people and talk to people about what it is that you're doing. One, you would have had to have enough focus to be able to put this together in 1 minute, but then it also eliminates any bias about, well, I said it this way yesterday, I said it that way tomorrow, and so everybody sees the same thing, and so you get very consistent responses from it. So this is not only going to tell you about online research, but it is a tool that you can actually use to conduct research for yourself for free. Let's see if it works.
I think we're going to actually plug in
Oh, it doesn't? No sound?
this here.
Okay, if all else fails, we'll go to the stores. Oh. No, I'm live. Sorry. I thought it worked as Porsche at home. Yeah. Well, yeah, because it needed the sound. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Maybe at the break I can show it to you on my computer. But it's a really nifty way to be able to tell your story in a way that is cheap and will get results for you. So affordable options, and I put that in there because a typical focus group, if I went to, and I just proposed one, I went to 3 cities, 3 groups per city, that's $30,000. Yeah, it is. It's $30,000 and does not include travel for client, travel for me, snacks for respondents, things like that. So to do an online qualitative study, that might come down to 19. And that's depending upon whether or not client wants a report. So a report can cost somebody about between $5,000 and $10,000 for somebody to go through all the stuff and tell you what people said. So it's important that you realize how much these things cost, because now you can actually do DIY groups. If my little video had been working, and we'll give you a link to that, it would have shown you how you could have just put together that little video. You can maybe, let's say you're at Venture Cafe and you've got a couple donuts, or because they give away, they have, beverages, but they don't really have food. But let's just say you talk to Christina over there and say that you want to set up a table in one of the other rooms, and you have your little 1-minute video to talk to people, and maybe you tell them you're going to give them some snacks or whatever if they'll spend 30 minutes with you, or even 15 minutes. You just have that information ready, and that's another reason why the video would be really cool, and have a little discussion guide, and you can sit there and do your own focus groups for free. Another way, if you belong to a club, and sometimes you sacrifice in terms of target market, but if you belong to a club, you can ask whoever is organizing the meeting for that particular session, can I get 15 minutes just to talk about my idea and to ask some people some questions? It's the same kind of idea, but you're doing it in a very informal way. And you have somebody there to take notes for you, because you will forget, because you're engaged in talking with people. And what moderators have, the advantage is that they're in a facility and the conversation is being recorded. So I can go back and listen to tapes, or even if it's online, those online groups are recorded. I can go back and listen to what consumers said, but you won't have that. So it's important for you to have someone that can take notes for you. Even if you belong to a church, lemonade and cookies after service, come talk to me. People will do that. It's really good, because you're not asking for 2 hours, you're asking for something like 15, 30 minutes. But have your discussion guideline, what do you want to talk to them, what do you want to learn, ready. Coffee shops are a good one. They're looking for people to talk to in coffee shops. I mean, you have your little computer there, you sit up, you show your little video, and you ask someone, what do you think about this? And it's perfect, and you find out these things. You have to be, a little outgoing to be able to do this, but you find out these things that are really critical to how you can position your brand for free. So, but don't expect from qualitative to be able to count or do any kind of stat modeling. It just is not the way it's done. It's not trying to establish the absolute ideal, and it is really about trying to create a hierarchy of consumer interest. That's the best way of talking about it. And it's not a substitute for quantitative. So I put together, and you have this in that deck in terms of the summary of exactly what you should be using qualitative for in terms of big picture early in the process. You're trying to understand how this product fits into someone's life, and you're actually providing them with some sort of narrative, right? Because you've got some stimuli there to bounce off of them. So these are, and when you're doing your own focus groups, remember, don't ask them, well, do you like it? Yes, no. That's a yes, no. If anything comes out of your mouth that someone can answer yes or no to, you do not have a good question. So these are all open-ended questions, and get people to, explain. I don't understand that. Tell me more about that. I love what you're saying. How can we make this work? And the biggest thing you can ask someone is, what don't you like about it? And nobody really likes to hear that the baby's ugly. Moms don't come and say, tell me, what don't you like about my baby? They just don't do that. Because it's not human nature to want to know the ugly. But some of the most important things you can find out about whatever it is that you're doing is what people don't like about it and what all the barriers are. When I was a project manager and working on new product development, the biggest question was, what can go wrong? What can go wrong with this? Because if you can figure out all those negative things and what will go wrong, then you're on the way to a more successful launch. Any questions?
You said that people don't want to hear what's ugly about their baby. It seems like a lot of people don't necessarily want to say it either. So do you have some tips for how to get people to be more open about what they don't like rather than just tell you what they think you want to hear about something?
Well, it's easy for me because I'm the moderator, and you can actually tell people that this is not really your deal, you're just doing this for a friend. Because what happens is that when I'm the moderator, they already know that nothing they say is going to hurt my feelings. So, in fact, I did a group once with some concepts that I had written, and this woman goes, this is crazy, some man wrote this. And I'm there going, why do you think that? And so they say anything to me because they're just, I'm not the stakeholder to that extent. But you have to convince them that what they're telling you can really help. Because I would say, if it was a friend of mine, I would say, well, look, I'm really investing a lot of time and money into this. And if you see anything that is a problem, it would really, really help me out because I can then start to plan for that. And so you appeal to them. If it's people that don't know you very well, you can just force it. You ask a question about 3 or 4 times, they'll tell you what's wrong. You don't ask that question once. You may not even ask it the same way, but you ask it a couple of different ways, and sure enough, you can get them to tell you, to cut with the politeness and tell you what's wrong. But I would also, if it's people, tell them how much you're investing in this and that it's critical that you really know, just make them tell you 2 things that are wrong. And then they can, shower you with praises for the rest of the session.
How important is it if the person has an opportunity to use the product?
Well, that's a usage test.
Okay.
And initially, when you're doing qualitative, that's not as important. But if you can send some product, so what happens is that you send product home with people and you have them actually create a diary, and then you bring them back and talk to them about it, right? So that's a little bit more, and you can't do that with qualitative. There are assignments, if you will, that people get to do prior to a session that might include either responding to some online bulletin boards, having the product shipped to their homes, and then they're writing a diary about it, and then they come into the group with some attitudes about how they use their product at home, who used it, who ate it, who whatever, and then they can tell you. So some exercises you can do. Okay? Anything?
I was gonna say, I did that, I gave them lip balm, and I had to pull it out of them with what was wrong, and I finally had to say, listen, this is what I did is wrong, this is one thing that's bothering me about it. And they're like, okay, I'll tell you. It was this, and it was that, it was like, but I did it, I had to ask 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, you do.
3 or 4
You,
times.
because they don't want to, people don't want to hurt your feelings. Because they know it's your idea, and they're just trying to be polite. And they're not as polite when it's a neutral party like me,
Okay.
which is good. It's a good thing.
So you could do it for each other, right? Like, you could.
That's true. You can, one can, but they'd have to be like completely unaware of what your role is. And that's another good thing about going to a coffee shop, because they don't know you, and yeah, it could really work out well. Or meetup group, one of those meetup groups. So any kind of organization that you belong to, that you can get a couple people together, and maybe they don't really know you, they're not that invested in you, and they're more willing to give. But that's a great example in terms of just picking out something you don't like yourself, or something that you feel might become a problem in the future, and just, oh, you know, I was thinking that people, it might break if the kid got hold to it. What would that do? So those are the kinds of things that you can have in your discussion guide. But it really is important that you have somebody else take notes, because you won't remember. It's hard to remember.
That was my question.
Yeah, it's hard.
How do you do that? How do you keep the information without? So
You have somebody else to take notes for you. If you're trying to moderate a session, have a friend just write down what they're saying. If it's a casual kind of situation, I wouldn't, unless you really, I wouldn't ask them to have it tape record. I mean, you could do it on your phone. You can have the conversation taped on your phone. But I think that makes people feel even more nervous. I think it's just easier and much more informal if you just have a friend there to write down, because you're thinking about the next question or trying to probe a little bit further. And it just takes time and skill to kind of be able to remember what people are saying, especially you can imagine if you're talking to like 3 groups in one day. So you're talking to people about the same subject for 6 hours. Only really big themes come out then.
is it more of a conversation versus saying, like, can you raise your hand if you think this? Like, are you trying to keep it more?
I would keep it, if you're trying to do the DIY, I would keep it, one, you need a discussion guide. It's not a conversation.
Okay.
Okay, you only have a certain amount of time, which is what I do. I've got 2 hours with these people. I've timed the discussion guide to get at everything that I need to get at within those two hours. I've put time limits on each conversation, and if it starts to go, I'm keeping track of time. If it starts to go over, then I'm moving it on. Okay, so it's important that you have a discussion guide with critical questions that you need to have answered about this product, because otherwise you're wasting your time and you're wasting other people's time. So it's not really a conversation. You want to act like it's conversational, and they should be having fun, you know, when they're doing this. But you have goals and outcomes that you're trying to get at. But they should be having fun too. That's where the snacks and the M&Ms come in. Okay, quantitative. Oh, I'm sorry, Matthew.
To that one, and still within this scope of qualitative, would using a landing page, using a teaser video, and putting that out on, say, one of the crowdfunding sites to see what kind of reactions you get, or turning that into a Facebook page and seeing what kind of reactions you get, would that still be like qualitative data? Or because there's not someone moderating this feed, is it just junk data?
Well, you have to ask questions, and so then that goes into the realm of quantitative. If you're asking questions and you have enough people coming to the site. So, let me go to your first question. Crowdsourcing, like a Kickstarter.
Sure.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
So you put it on Kickstarter. That's free.
Right.
But then you have to drive people to that page to do something. And so the time and money it takes to, because there are thousands of projects on there, you'd have to spend to actually drive people to that site. So there may be other ways of getting that information.
And not really a great space.
Well, you-
to ask questions, correct?
No, you have to, but you have to track it. So if you create a web page, you still have to have people come to that page. And then you have to have some sort of questionnaire for them to complete so that you would know what they felt about it. So then it's not qualitative, it becomes quantitative, and then you just hope that you get enough people to be able to do the math.
The term qual, does it mean like qualifying the idea? Am I missing this?
Well, qualitative, it doesn't necessarily mean, what you call it, qualifying the idea.
Qualifying the idea.
No,
seems like
this-
qualitative and quantitative is counting.
It
and
is,
finding
but-
numerical response.
Yes, but qualitative is more what I would call, like I said, exploratory.
Correct.
You're just trying to understand whether or not you have an idea that is maybe compelling to someone, and then what those big watch out fors might be, or what those big, oh my gosh, that's really compelling. So then you can take that and actually blow it out to a larger group of people to get validation. That's where you get your validation. And that's why it's important not to confuse qualitative with quantitative.
Obviously.
Yeah, that's okay.
So then in an idea where you're saying maybe driving potential users to a landing page and putting a survey on that.
You have to.
Then that would be a qualitative approach, correct? Like we're vetting the idea, trying to figure.
Oh, that would actually be a quantitative approach because you can't talk to them. So they're in cyberspace, right? So they're coming to a website, they don't have somebody who's moderating it, right? So if they say, oh, I don't like this, there's no way to find out, well, why don't you like that? What about it don't you like? Or if it's not for you, who might it be for? I see that's like, oh my gosh. Because if somebody comes to that landing site, you don't know anything about them. You don't know what the demos are. You don't know whether or not they have a kid at home, or whether or not they're under stress, or you don't know who's filling out that survey unless you have that information. But you can't find out why someone has rated or given you that answer, which is what a qualitative allows you to do. It allows you to go, why? Why did you do that? Or how does this make you feel? And when you're dealing with just standalone questionnaire, you can't find those things out, those very tangible things, because if there's an app that monitors your health and you really want to know, well, why is that important? Oh, well, I have a chronic disorder, I have to have this. Or, well, I don't have to have it, but I think it's kind of cool because when I go work out, then I'll know what my body stats are. And so then you go into those 3 different users. I got one user using the same app because they got a chronic disorder. I've got one user, it's more of a casual kind of user that might be interested in this app because they just think it's cool and sexy. So, but I can find that out in qualitative. I can find out who likes what and why, because I can start to ask questions and we can have a dialogue. So,
Like in school, when he talks about qualitative, it's kind of like,
This is the first time I've heard this term.
yeah, no, you're good, you're good. It just told us which direction to go. So it can tell you that it's right, or it can tell you it's wrong, or which direction you need to go to get the answer. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't tell you necessarily that what you're looking for is correct. It's just going to give you something. It's just your job to find out what it's going to give you.
it's directional.
And quantitative can be counted. You
Yeah.
have a quantity, right? I can count it. Qualitative is more anecdotal. So when people are looking for outcomes, I can say, well, 5 people improved by X%, that's quantitative. I can quantify what the change is. But if half the people tell me, oh, I feel better after using it, even though my blood pressure didn't change at all, that's more anecdotal, that's qualitative. We'll give you as many examples as we can think of to help you.
That sounds great.
Yeah, well, maybe if I just walk through what, I keep forgetting this thing is behind me. I'm like, what is that? So quantitative, like she said, you can count them. I like quantitative, actually. You can do, quantitative has been done online since the beginning of time. So I like I think that's one of the reasons why I like online qualitative, because it's online. I like that. So it's empirical data collection. And it is a statistical model, and it can really explain what's going on in a very big way. So it's conclusive. People do quantitative to find out, for real, should I move forward with this? This is the line in the sand. So it is done to get a real answer, yes, no, should go, no go. You can find out some other things with quantitative too, but the ideal is that it is not exploratory. It is indeed giving you solid direction in terms of what it is that you need to do and say.
Did you have any experience where a qualitative said this might be a good idea and a quantitative said it's a no-go?
Well, yes, because sometimes you're doing concept testing, and people say, oh yes, because maybe you didn't have a very good moderator too, so that plays into it. But then when you go to quantitative, it just doesn't meet the standard to move forward. I still may like it, but just not enough people like it to buy it.
I think of that with, like, I used to sell wine and spirits, so they did tons of quantitative on what if people would like the product, but then it actually wouldn't sell. They would find that, they would predict it would sell, but then it wouldn't. That would be sort of something that you ask, right? Sometimes they may think, oh, everyone loves this because it's blueberry whiskey, but then nobody's actually buying it, but they're all saying they're going to buy it.
Right, well, but that's what she was asking, but I don't know. I've never gone through this process and come out of a quantitative with just a really big fat dud. Yeah, so.
Yeah, do you want to try it? We got it.
No, because I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at doing this. And so because it's like, I did new product innovation in terms of generating all these concepts and testing them with consumers and figuring out, which ones I needed to take to quantitative. But it depends on the type of quantitative you do also. So they're not all the same. So the test that you choose can really aid you in avoiding those landmines. Do they happen? Absolutely. Because a lot of times people also aren't really hearing what the qualitative and the quantitative are really saying. And you've got people in a higher position going, that can't be right, we're moving forward. So usually consumers will tell you what they think, and whether or not the organization moves forward might be a very political thing and not really having anything to do with the research. But you don't have to worry about that because you guys are driving your own business. So quantitative, it involves a questionnaire. So you put together all these questions. It has the upfront part has some demographic because you're screening, right? Now you've done this qualitative, you know who Sally was, that persona that we did. She was vegan, millennial, 40 grand, cares about the earth, doesn't want things that are animal. I know who she is now. I know I can screen for someone who's a millennial, makes 40 grand, cares about the earth, loves her dog. So that's tight. That's a very tight consumer. We're not having groups with 3 sets of people. We have Sally over here, and then we've got John, who's maybe a boomer, a group with boomers, a group with Gen X, and trying to figure out who really likes, who's my target. We've already decided that because we've talked to those people and we know that the millennial Sally is our person. So we're screening for that. So it's very specific in terms of who it is that you're talking to here, which is why it costs so much. But it usually revolves around a questionnaire. And this is one of the reasons because I didn't feel like what I gave you was adequate enough. But This is a concept statement. So this is the kind of thing that might be tested in a quantitative concept test. And so and it's simple, because they don't want you to put any marketing jargon in it. It's just very simple. And this is a new app. This new app translates cyber currency into any legacy currency, e.g. US dollars, euro, pound, and it costs $1.99 to download. And I did call those legacy currency, because it's all going to be this in a minute. But, so, that's the app, and that's the concept. That's all people know about it. Then, I asked them to say, well, would you purchase that app? Probably purchase it, might or might not, probably would not, definitely would not. So most companies, and they call this top 2 box. So most companies, if you're getting the top 2 box, 65% of the people say that they definitely or probably would buy it, you probably got a decent idea that people will be willing to pay for. Because you got 65% of the people saying yes. Not only just 65% of the people, but 65% of your target market saying yes. Because remember, we've screened for the people who we think will buy this. And now they're like, yeah, we'll buy it. But at the same time, if you show them that concept, and they said, and you've got definitely would purchase 10%, probably 15, so you're looking at 25% of the people saying that either definitely or might buy your product, you know, you might want to think about something else to do. Yes?
It would make sense, though, if it was a high margin expensive product, that might actually be a very good number.
No. Because remember
The group itself
exactly.
has only a potential.
Right, you've already identified, because this is quantitative, you screen for the people who you think really will use this, all right? And so if the people that you're targeting in this study are saying, no, you have missed the mark, this is not something I need, one, you probably wouldn't get scores this low, you probably would have found that out in some sort of qualitative, but just say you got to this point. It's a no. It's a no-go. And, yes?
I have a question. So, in my qualitative, to get customer segment feedback, along with the questions of what their pain points is, this is one of the questions, or it is a totally separate?
It's just one of the questions. So I'm just giving an example of the kind of question, because what you can do now is, this is math, there are 500 people that I've given this survey to. So that's a pretty good chunk. And let's just say it's national, just for fun. So, and that's a respectable national survey. And I've given it to 500 people who I believe should be interested in this, regardless of the price point, whatever it is. Right now it's just a $1.99 app. I should be getting something a little bit better than that. This tells me I got a real problem. And I can't even go back to them and ask them why. Why don't you like it? What was it about that concept statement that I wrote that you didn't feel good about? Because it's quantitative. And they were sitting there answering this questionnaire on their computer at home. You don't know who they are. You know, you can't talk to them like we're talking.
So what are the numbers, the metrics that you would say was great, okay, definitely go back to the drawing board? I mean, is it like 50%, or, I mean, what are those numbers?
Companies have benchmarks that because they run these tests all the time, and so they have historical indications of when I get and I really look at definitely would purchase. When I get a definitely would purchase floating around 40%, I'm feeling pretty good about that. And even depending upon the category, 25%, but it's this top 2 box that most people really clamor around. And if I'm looking at 65%, that's pretty good. But I have to tell you that really varies depending upon client. So some companies might feel good if they got this was 50%. So that's about the only subjective piece of this. It's where's your go, no-go milestone. But there's some things that are just obvious. So I tried to give you one that's a really good idea. We're moving forward with that one. Not so much here. We're not spending any money, more money behind that until we figure out what went drastically wrong.
I'm in the science and biospace, so like some of this is, you know, I really can see some analogies, but right now I'm getting very low feedback from, say, the pharmaceutical industry. But I can still get money from the government to continue to de-risk. So even though my wood purchase and probably wood purchase is really, it's zero right now because no one's purchasing, I'm still moving forward because I'm getting grant money. And so I don't know if, like, how bioscience will fit into this because I'm still getting funded, but people are telling me right now at, you know, let's say at this stage, we don't want it. You know, so I'm just interested in your thoughts on that because
Christian, if I may, just take a shot at that. The topic of this talk is consumer research, first of all. So these are techniques that are aimed at consumers, right? So this might be the kind of thing when your vaccine many years down the road from where you are today has been developed into a product where, you know, a parent has to choose between one vaccine or another. This is the kind of testing that might be done with somebody like that to say, what are the features that would describe this in such a way that would motivate them to definitely or probably purchase, right? So this would be relevant to the technology that you're developing. It's just way later,
Right.
when it's in front of a consumer. So does that answer your question?
yeah, but I just was thinking of more of like that I also have customers and the end user
Right.
we've been talking about, and then I also have my
Yeah,
a different customer segment.
but as we talked about before, there's only about 4 or 5 companies in the world that are actually customers for your product. This isn't the kind of technique you use with them.
Right, you would actually have to use like I would call it a customer listening, because you have such a small group of customers that your target market basically is a handful of customers. So then it becomes qualitative in terms of interviewing, and then it might be something like a customer listening session where then you can vet out between a B2B kind of target what it is that's going on. So there are still techniques, but you're still in the product development phase, even though, you know, thinking about that qualitative and how to describe this and how to make it more appealing to more people is a good thing. But it's not to say that just because you're in this really new space, it's like nobody's going to buy that app about cyber currency. That's why I made it that obscure. You know, an app to convert legacy dollars into cyber currency. 90% of the people I speak with about that would say, I don't know what that is. What are you talking? Why would I pay? I have no idea what that is, you know? And so I would probably get scores like this or worse, right? But they don't know is that I've done all this trend research that says that that's going to be legacy currency in a minute. And I know that that's going to be the case, so I'm still going to move forward with it. So, it's more reliable, it's objective, because you don't have somebody like me swaying the audience to love your product. Moderators aren't supposed to do that. But because you're talking to a large group of people, they're somewhere else, they don't know you, and if they don't like it, they really aren't concerned about hurting your feelings. So it is large amount of data, very reliable, usually national. Sometimes you can do it in a specific geography. And it looks at relationships between variables. Is what I'm saying motivating enough to get a purchase intent? Now that's just one question. You know, quantitative, you might have somebody answering a minimum of 20 questions. And if it's a brand equity study, they might be sitting there answering 50 questions. So it's an ordeal. And people get paid for that, so. So the benefits, though, is that it's excellent for quantifying and finalizing results. Because if you're talking to 500, 1,000 people and they're all kind of shunning you, you know, you probably need to rethink what it is that you're doing. So then, under normal circumstances, like you've done your trend research, you've talked to them in qualitative, you've got some idea, and sometimes it can be done in what's called an omnibus. You can just go it through a pretty big kind of crowdsourcing concept evaluation for little to no money. But, you know, it's really structured. And then the methodologies, and I wouldn't do the math, so, but the methodologies that are used have been time tested for hundreds of years. So this is something that's pretty predictable. And people use them for concept testing, like new ideas, for in-home tests. Someone asked about in-home testing and taste testing, for instance. So I've sent like tons of samples to people's homes and asked them to evaluate it through BASES and send me back what it is that they thought about it. So yes, ad testing, media testing, brand equity studies, pricing. But I thought I'd show you some examples. So this is a classic pricing analysis technique. And so it tells me for this product that let's just say it's a meal. So I know that if I charge $3.50 for this product, I'm going to get 90% of the people to buy it. The people I've tested in this study. But if I charge $6, that drops it down to less than 50%. Now that may be all right if my profit margin makes sense there. So this way I can actually start to develop a revenue model and a P&L. Because now I know at what volume, at what price that people are willing to pay for this product. So, and this is a classic pricing analysis that's been done for years and years. And it actually works. It's amazing. Or, so this is another study that I did. So I wanted to know how many people would be interested in this particular idea. So there are about 116 million households. Then I think that based on what I know about my consumer, there are about 40 million households that should be interested in this. When I did my testing, it turned out to be about 14 million. And then I did it in, this was nationally, and then this was in a footprint because it was a regional role to understand how many people within the geographic target would be interested in buying this product. Because as you can see, if I've got 6 million people in the Northeast who are interested in buying it at $6 a pop, then I can create a P&L, and I can look at my cost of goods and whatever the spending I need to do in order to drive awareness and trial and understand what the financial implications of what it is that I'm doing. A/B testing. You're doing a series of ads on Facebook, trying to figure out which one makes more sense. So this ad, 306 people got the ad, 10% click-through rate. For this ad here, I know that 306 people got the ad, 60% click-through rate. Which one do you think I'm going with? So that's A/B testing. And then we're back to our liquor. So now we've explored this in qualitative. I know that these three were the winners. So now I can put this, I can show this to, let's call it 1,000 people, and have them really pick which one they like. And then I'd feel more comfortable about moving forward with one of those, right? So when you're trying to finalize, and you really need to know, let's just say you need to spend $1 million in capital to get this thing going. You might, want to really know whether or not you should invest in it. And it's not just, talking to 30 people in a conference room, chatting it up. You might want to talk to a few more. And when you want to be confident about moving forward. So, but don't expect it to be exploratory. Don't expect to want to know that how and probe and why, because it's just not set up like that. It's not structured. And in qualitative, you can shift. If I find that people really don't like it for some reason, I can shift the whole conversation to understand a whole nother thing, right? So I have the influence because I'm physically there and I can guide the conversation. If they're looking at a questionnaire without you, there's no way you can have input on that. They're going to fill out the questionnaire and you're going to get what you get. So this ability to change in process doesn't work. If we're in a qualitative setting, if I'm talking to people about a concept and the first group just hated it, and then I find out why, the second group, I can actually change that concept, give it to them, and see whether or not that works. You can't do that with quantitative because it's kind of distant, it's out there. So, and in that, it's the same thing. It's a summary where you use this later in the process. So this is, you've done a lot of things before you get here. Because, you know, these tests cost, like an ANU, annual ANU for a company might cost $75,000. Yeah, it's expensive. But you can do it for free. I love free. So one of the things you can do with SurveyMonkey, they have an offer where if you have your own list, you can literally sit there and generate your own questionnaire, send it out to people that you know, get it back, and the same with Google Analytics, and get it back and work with the numbers. With SurveyMonkey, where they start, and Toluna is another one of my favorites. You can't really do that there, but they're pretty low cost. But the money comes in when you're trying to get a very specific target. That's what costs, finding the right people. So if it's a general market study, that's going to be a lot less expensive than I need to talk to college-educated people who make $80,000 a year, who have 2.5 kids at home, and then they got a dog named Joe. Okay, they're going to cost you something to talk to that person. But if you just, you know, a research company can just build it out, general market, they might, you know, it might be $1,000, $2,000. But you can also do it for free on some of these platforms. If you're willing just to learn the platform and go in and do the questionnaire, you have your own email list. Now, that's free, but a single concept with 20 questions can, at the very least, will cost you $5,000. And that's through like online Toluna or SurveyMonkey. I'm not sure about Google because that's always just free. I don't know if people pay for that. So there are even ways of getting quantitative done. And like Matthew was saying, if you're so inclined to put up a page about it, you would still have to have a questionnaire there for somebody to fill out. And then you'd have to get the data and analyze it. And you'd have to make sure you had enough people to make it actionable.
Do you have thoughts on, like, with Google now, how you can buy, like, questions? I'm not sure. I mean, I just started exploring that, and I start to get them now when I want to read an article. It says you have to answer these survey questions.
Oh, that's fine.
Is that something?
That's just lead generation usually. It's not anything too terrible.
But is it worth doing? I mean,
depending upon what they're giving. I give out my information all day long to download trend reports, all kinds of studies, and nobody really calls me because then I put on there that, you know, I think they have a category in terms of how big your business is and how much money, how much revenue, and I think they figure out that, well, you know, she's just doing research. So, but yeah, I give my information out all the time, depending upon what it is that I want. But yes, that's fine. So these are some secondary resources, and I put this here because they are free. Because this is a way that you can actually get a lot of information for no money other than, you know, your time and understanding how to do this, right? So these are some of my favorites. I love Mintel. They're a global company. They put out trend reports all the time. Pew Research Center, oh my gosh, they are amazing in terms of the kind of information you can get there Forrester, Nielsen, and the trick here is that, so Forrester is a syndicated research company that charges somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 per report. However, if you have a topic, and I'll show you in a minute, if you see like Forrester being quoted somewhere, just go to Google and go Forrester topic X PDF. You'll be amazed at what comes up. It'll be enough that you can, really glean the information that you need out of that report for free. Now, a lot of times if you Google PDF the previous year, you'll get the whole report for free. So don't be, and Nielsen is the same way. They do a lot of, and I'll show you a couple things that I pulled from them, but it's the way you search for it. So when you're seeing something referenced in an article, click on the reference, go to the original source, and then figure out how you can get that information for free. It's out there. I've done complete trend reports, 50-page reports doing that, not buying not one single bit of data. So another thing is the data.gov and the U.S. Census. There's a wealth of information that the U.S. Census provides you. It's called the Community Report. You can get all kinds of demographics on what's going on, and they have some reports that are already just packaged for you. So that's a huge thing. And then things like Harvard Business Review, you can go there and sign up for, give them your information. And they'll give you downloads, like 10, 15 downloads before they start asking you to sign up for the subscription. But guess what? After I've got 5 or 10, that's probably all I needed for right now. So there are ways of getting this very expensive information. Corporate publications, your competitive set, they publish all kinds of things in annual reports that you can use. But people don't really think about that. So all this stuff, I got from Forbes. A search on Forbes talking about millennials' health and wellness and what makes them happy. I saw this article came from Washington Post, and then I saw that it was GfK, which is a really global research firm, and I just Googled GfK, global pets, and got the full PDF. Talking about, millennials are picking pets over people. Fascinating. All of this is free. Hispanics driving U.S. population growth. All that. So you actually can figure out what your demographics are for free. So you don't have to pay for all this stuff. If you want to know how many African Americans are going to be running around here in 2020, the census data will give you that. And then what these other companies do, all they're really doing is taking the census data, making it pretty, and packaging it up for you guys. So this was from Nielsen's social media report. You might be wondering, well, how am I going to reach these people, these millennials? Oh, well, now I know that how much time they're spending on social media, what % of the time they're on, and I can go down to how much time they're spending on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and I can also find this information out for free by race. Not only age, but race. All that's free. So all this was free. So, okay.
Just a comment. St. Louis County Library, if you want to talk about, they have multiple databases, and they'll teach you how to use them to do all that stuff. But
Yeah.
they're paying for it. You want to get a library card with them.
It's your tax dollars at work.
Yeah.
We'll send you the contact information for Michelle and her team.
And because Chrissy is standing up, I'm almost done. But this is not a linear process. Sometimes you do the trends and you get all that stuff for free, and then you do brainstorming around that, and then you may do some qualitative, and you might go, oh, I'll do a little quantitative, and then once you do the quantitative, you might find something out, and you might want to go back to brainstorming, you might want to go back to qualitative. It is not A, B, C, D, okay? And then this one slide goes through both of them, so you only have one page. Okay? That is?